There's a bit of an echo, so this is weird. I'm going to hand this over to Bridget, and she can offer some words before I get into what I'm going to get into.
Yeah. Hi all, thank you for being here and welcome to the newcomers. Paul will give a workshop. It will about be 30 minutes. And he is the founder of Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I started in Australia in 2016. It's only 2 years ago. And now there are close to 600 Cube of Truth all over the world. In the Netherlands we started in July 2017 and we now have 9 chapters. There is a famous writer, Victor Hugo, who said, "There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come." I think the Cube of Truth proved to be very powerful and the time of animal liberation has come. The number of vegans is growing, the availability of vegan food is growing, the number of activists is growing, and we will continue to grow. The time of animal liberation has come.
Gotcha. Hold the mic closer to your mouth.
Oh, yeah. Animal liberation is the next step in the social justice movement, and I thank you all for helping and doing this. Paul is doing this during his holiday, so a big thank you for him.
Thank you. We just threw this whole mic and speaker thing together, so bear with us. Actually, I don't know what that term means, bear with us. Does anybody know what that means? Bear? As in a grizzly bear? Bear with us? I don't know what it means. I don't know why we say it. Anyway, so thank you for that, and I agree, it is no greater injustice in this world than what is happening to animals. The animal exploitation empire is currently facing destruction because the vegan movement has never been more convicted, more committed, more passionate, and the truth has never been more exposed than ever before. And we are fastly approaching a vegan world. We just had the release of Dominion documentary. Have you guys heard of Dominion? Cool. So that is an Australian-based documentary, but it does uncover the truth of the animal exploitation empire. And the empire is more grotesque than us vegans even understand. Even us vegans don't get the severity of what is happening. And so it's good for us vegans to also watch these documentaries, to enliven the conviction that we have within us already, and to strengthen our activism, and to make sure that this world does become vegan. So I am on vacation and I am here today because we did a workshop in August of last year here in Amsterdam, and now we're doing a cube. I'm here to do a cube with all of you because I was here on vacation, but I couldn't not come to this cube because I'm so inspired of the growth of this chapter and the health of this chapter. You guys are doing a fantastic job here in Amsterdam, and I'm more proud than you can understand. So a round of applause to all of you. So I'm really happy to see how AV is growing here in Amsterdam. And I love this city, that's why I'm here on vacation. But it's also amazing to be able to do some kick-ass activism while I'm here with all of you. So before we get into the activism, I'm going to describe the Cube of Truth in very black and white terms and go through how the Cube of Truth works. And I'm going to do a workshop with all of you. So you may already know this stuff, you may not know this stuff, but please just hang around and listen to the words I have to share with all of you. Some of the stuff will be very cut and dry and just to the point, but I'm also going to do an outreach segment where I can help you with the outreach challenges that you might have. So if you have objections that you receive from non-vegans that you struggle with understanding how to respond to, then let me know in the Q&A part, and I'll help you with that. We'll go through a whole bunch of outreach stuff. That will be the focus of the workshop, and hopefully this workshop won't go longer than half an hour in total so we can get to doing the Q. Hello? Hi. So, without further ado, I'll describe the cube. So there's two elements to the cube of truth. There's the cube, and then there's the truth. The truth is the outreach. We're the ones doing the education, we're talking to people, having discussions, and leading them to a vegan conclusion. So I'll talk about the cube first. The cube is the art installation. That's the art performance. That's how we display the footage to the public. That's how we get the information across initially. That's how we pique people's interest to come over and engage with us. It's very important that we allow people to come to us. Because I know that you all know that when you're walking down the street, you don't necessarily have an intention to stop and watch animal cruelty footage. Do you? And you also don't have the intention to take materials from people and read them or listen to salespeople in general, right? You want to make your own decisions. You want to go to a retail store and buy something because you actually want it and you were thinking of doing that. So it's your own choice. People need to make their own choices is the point I'm trying to make. And with the Cube of Truth, it's a very effective way of having people make that choice on their own, allowing them to come to us, because it's very captivating to see the cube. Nobody wants to see animal cruelty, but when it captivates you and your curiosity is piqued, you can't help but watching it because it's there and everybody's looking so committed and serious about the work that they're doing. And the art installation is very attractive. So it brings people over. You all know that. I don't need to say any of that. But the way that the cube operates is that, and I'm sure Bridget has covered all of this, so I don't say any of this in order to I don't expect that this hasn't already been spoken about, but I just want to make sure that the cube structure is something that I convey correctly. So when you're standing in the cube, please stand nice and straight. Your posture is very important. How we stand, how we face, our heads have to be nice and straight. Everything nice and straight like a robot, like an army soldier, okay? Very present, in the moment, standing in solidarity for the animals as an art installation, okay? So you're holding the screen or you're holding a sign very straight. And whatever you're holding, please hold it like you would have an art piece in your house. You'd want it to be nice and straight. You wouldn't want it to be hanging any direction. You want it to be very aesthetically pleasing. So someone from outreach, from outside the cube, they might come over to you and straighten what you're holding, because we can see it better from the outside, obviously. So we might come over and say, you know, to straighten things up. When you're in the cube, if you need to come out of the cube for whatever reason, by the way, I just want to say that the cube is equally important to the outreach. There is no role that is more important, okay? So nobody is above being in the cube. Without the cube, the outreach would just be outreach. And without the outreach, the cube wouldn't work either. So they're equally important. Nobody's above any of these roles. I'll jump in the cube. Bridget would jump in the cube if we absolutely need to. Like, if we need to, we'll do it. No one's above it. So that's the cube. If you need to come out of the cube for whatever reason, you raise your hand. There's 3 circumstances where you would raise your hand. 1, if you see a child watching without a parent, we just want to do the right thing and make sure that the parent understands we have permission. If not, we take them away from the cube and we educate them in a child-friendly manner, which means you just simplify the message, and I'm sure you know how to do that. You wouldn't say, did you know that 56 billion animals are slaughtered every year? Like, the kid's not going to be able to process that. You might want to just say, do you understand that eating animals hurts animals? You just make it really simple, you know? So you'd educate them away from the footage, away from the cube. In the second circumstance, this echo is really messing me up. Raise your hand, and if you need to come out of the cube. So if you need to come out of the cube, raise your hand and we'll come over and we'll find somebody to swap with you. So just give us a few minutes to find somebody to swap with you. If you see somebody who hasn't been spoken to yet, a bystander, and the outreachers aren't doing their job, obviously this would be after a good few minutes of a bystander standing there. then please raise your hand and alert one of the outreachers. Now, please do this in a covert way. Don't just point at the outreacher, at the bystander, my bad. So you don't just point at the outreacher and go, they need to be spoken to, you know, because they're going to know and they're not going to feel comfortable with the fact that they've been targeted. So just mention it in a covert way, and then the outreacher will do their thing. They'll go over and speak with the bystander in a respectful way so that they don't feel uncomfortable about the situation. So there are the three circumstances you'd raise your hand when you're in the cube. Any questions about the cube? No? Okay. All right, so now the outreach. Now with the outreach, we allow people to come to us and then we approach them. So I don't really want to put a time frame on this because you have to use your best judgment, but usually it's between 30 seconds and a minute. So we allow people to stop, watch the footage, and then we approach. So we don't just approach everybody, we don't hand out leaflets to everybody. We're there waiting for people to come to us, and then we approach them and have a conversation. How do we have a conversation with them? There's many ways that you can break the ice and open the conversation. I'll give you some suggestions. The first thing that we tend to ask people is, have you ever seen this kind of footage before? That's the first question that you would ask them. But to be honest with you, the best way to break the ice is to just say hi. Just be a normal human being, be a cool person. Just say hello. Would you like to know why we're here? That's it. They can tell you yes or no. Then you can say, have you ever seen this footage before? That answer that they give you will give you information about where they're at in terms of this issue. That will allow you to know what kind of work you have to do to convince them to become vegan. If they say, yes, I've seen all this footage before and I don't really care, then you know you've got a lot of work on your hands, or probably you don't even want to deal with that person and just say, well, that's fine. Would you like a card? Have a nice day. Or you might want to know how much they know. So have you seen this stuff on social media? Do you understand how the dairy industry works? Do you understand how the egg industry works? Do you understand how animals are exploited in many industries like horse racing, aquariums, animals being tested on, etc.? Now, if they don't know much, it's a good opportunity for you to educate them and take them through all of the truths that we understand as vegans through a series of questions. It's better to use the Socratic method, which is asking questions rather than lecturing people and making statements. It's more effective to ask a question as opposed to making a statement. And it will be just as effective in terms of the intention that you have, which is for them to get it. So I'll give you an example. Did you know that 50% of the world's grain is being put aside and fed to farmed animals? That's a question. I could have said that as 50% of the world's grain is being put aside and fed to farmed animals. Now that's a statement, right? But you're not having a conversation with anybody. So you're not allowing them to engage into that information. You want them to respond to that information. So you ask them, did you know? And then they'll say yes, no, maybe. So this is about understanding where they're at, how much work you have to do in order to get them to see a vegan conclusion. If they say, yes, I've seen all of it before, and they have a sense of apathy, you know that you've got a lot of work to do, like I said. Or it might be a matter of you realizing that there's no hope, and you might want to just cut the conversation short. Or if they say they've never seen this footage before, or many people say that, then you know that you've got a good opportunity to educate them. You've got somebody who doesn't have as much of the conditioning, and that you can work through that a lot easier. So does everybody know what the point system is? Has anybody heard of the point system? Alright, so the point system is as follows. We're not here today to convince people to be vegan on the spot. So I can alleviate all of your stress immediately. So I don't want you to lose your sanity like I have many times. You explain everything, you make so much sense, and then the person says, yeah, I don't know. I know what it's like. You're not here to convince people to go vegan 100%. I didn't go vegan 100% on the spot. I didn't. I know that many of you didn't either. It's a process. Somebody convinces you, makes solid points that you can't deny. It might take months for you to actually click, right? So we work on a point system. If you speak to somebody who's never heard about veganism before, they've never seen the footage, they're at 0 points. That means you might educate them, you might do an amazing job at educating them, but they still might be sitting at 70 points or 80 points. So that means they might go off, talk to a friend, they might say one comment that makes sense, that's 85 points. Then they see something on Facebook, they see an image of a pig being slaughtered, it really triggers them, that's 95 points. They're nearly there. Then they see a documentary, and they're 100 points. They're vegan, right? So that's how it works. You might be speaking to somebody who is a cattle farmer. They might be negative 100 points, right? So you've got a lot of work to do. But again, you might say something that makes them think. You might plant a few seeds, and you push them up to negative 50. So I'm trying to be positive here, even though that still sounds negative. Sounds negative, but my point is that if you look at this as trying to edge people up into a space where they will become vegan and they're on the path to becoming vegan, that's our job well done. Now, we do keep a tally of everybody that we feel is sincerely going to take the issue seriously. So we can't say if anybody is going to be vegan, even if they say it to you, because you don't know. Unless you become a private investigator and you follow up on their lives, you just won't know. So we go off people showing us their sincere conviction on taking this issue seriously. We take a tally, we keep a note in our phones. Please don't try to keep it up here, because it's not the best place to store information. A lot of the times you forget. So try to keep it in your phone or something more tangible on how many people you've spoken to throughout today that take the issue seriously. Now, I'm going to get into the outreach part, doing a Q&A. Actually, before I do that, just to simplify this, I also want you to understand that outreach is more about the why factor than it is about the how. So you're trying to convince them about why they need to be vegan. That's most of the work that we have to do. How is easy, because we know how. We can just tell them about Challenge 22. We can tell them about our website. We can tell them about the recipes and the support that we'll give them. And, you know, that's all easy. The how part is not hard. It's the why factor. So try to work on the why points more than how. If you find yourself talking about all the vegan restaurants in Amsterdam, by the way, I love the vegan restaurants here. I love the vegan food here. It's amazing. Shout out to the vegan food here. You're talking about how to be vegan, how convenient it is to be vegan, right? But if you find yourself talking about that too soon, it might be a case of you missing the more important points, which is why we need to be looking for vegan restaurants to eat at to begin with. Does that make sense? All right, so now I'm going to do a Q&A. Please give me your questions regarding anything that you're challenged with when it comes to outreach. What are you challenged with personally? Anybody? No challenges? Yes.
When people say, yeah, but you really, I know you really like animals. It's a bit different for me. When they say that, it's kind of hard for me.
When they say they love animals?
That I love animals, so yeah, it's obvious. They say to me, it's obvious you're vegan because you really love animals. But for me...
Very good point. I have been known to say that veganism is not about compassion or about liking or loving animals. That's not the angle that I came from when I became vegan, especially not a vegan activist. I didn't do this because I have compassion for animals. I do this because it's just the right thing to do. You don't have to love an animal to not stab them. That's what I would say to that bystander. You don't have to love anybody to not kill them. Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, cows and chickens and pigs are being stabbed to death for a hamburger. No one's forcing you to eat the hamburger. And, I despise many humans, but I wouldn't kill them. I wouldn't slaughter them to death. Like, it just makes sense. If I was to talk about it that way to a bystander, I think they'd get it. Does that help you? Yeah, cool. Yep. Well, that's definitely... Yeah, sure. Good point. So the question on this... sorry, what was your name? Kevin. So Kevin's question was, when people say to us, what about when vegans eat things like quinoa, because there are farmers that are being exploited in order to produce that quinoa? So, speaking to the unethical practices of farming plants, my response to that would be, given that, yes, it's an issue, we definitely have to have a discussion about farming practices. But currently, 50% of the world's crops are being put aside and fed to farmed animals. So that's a much bigger of an issue for us to be focusing on. Humans tend to focus on 2% of the issue. But this is much larger of an issue. So we're not only addressing animals, we're addressing all these crops that are being farmed to be fed to animals, the humans that are being exploited to farm those plants. We're also addressing that. We're also addressing the world hunger issue. So in terms of veganism being about human rights, it emphatically is. We are actually addressing many human rights issues within a vegan world, being vegan. So it'd be more about educating how much veganism helps humans. That would be my response to that. Does that help? Awesome. Anybody else?
People always, a lot of times they tend to derail from the conversation, and they suddenly talk about, what's happening in Syria and all that stuff. And it's sometimes really hard to be polite and at the same time to try to keep them on
to keep the conversation anchored.
Yeah, it's going all places and it's not really going anywhere, and that's really a challenge for me.
What was your name?
Dan.
What's that? Dan? So Dan's question was, how do you keep the outreach interaction focused on animal liberation, on veganism? When people try to take the conversation in a different direction and talk about kids in Syria or crimes happening in other areas of the world or human rights injustices or whatever it might be, or abortion, many people bring up abortion. First of all, I would say that we can care about more than one issue. This isn't necessarily saying that we all need to only care about animals and nothing else. So we can be vegan and still fight for the children that are suffering in Syria. My other answer would be, what I'd also add on to that, is that being vegan doesn't stop you from fighting for the kids in Syria. And back to what I was just saying about how much veganism helps humans. So if somebody wants to distract the conversation with human rights stuff, you can just talk about how much veganism helps humans, right? Because that would be in alignment with what they're telling you that they value. So that might be a way around it. Essentially, it's also about you maintaining the conversation and making sure that they don't take control of it and start, just veering into whatever direction they want to. So it's about you also anchoring the conversation and keeping it on par with what you're trying to talk about. We're here today to discuss what's happening with these animals. And keep pointing back at the screen. We're here today as a part of this event. You're here today as a part of this event. You know what I mean? It's not about the children in Syria at this moment. At this moment, we're here discussing the animals. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Just a matter of practice, I think.
It is, yeah. But if people want to talk about human rights issues and take away from what we're doing, it just means that they're not fully understanding how much we help humans as vegans, and also how much it helps the world. It helps everybody, including the animals and everybody on it. So it's a matter of you educating them a bit further. Anybody else? Yes. Yes.
So sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone and they actually deny that animals have a will of their own and that they have feelings, and they're saying that it's not as conscious as we humans are and they experience life different. So it's not bad what we do to them.
Okay. What was your name?
Miriam.
Miriam? Miriam's question is, what if a bystander says that animals don't really have a level of consciousness that is the same as ours, and they don't really have the will? Is that what you said? The will to live? That's crazy to me. It's pretty obvious that they do. It's so obvious that they do.
She's watching. I hope so.
So appealing to lack of intelligence and whatever other criteria that people are trying to place on animals in order to justify killing them. I would say in response to that, there are many humans on this planet that do not have the same mental conscious abilities as others. There are many children that are born mentally challenged. There are many humans that do not have a will to live, but does that justify us murdering them for our benefit? Of course it doesn't. Does that help?
Yeah, I think I tried to say something like that, but she just keeps denying, but perhaps she's just then not ready to accept it. Or
Again, we're here to put points on their point system, right? So if they're not feeling that point, make your point, tell the truth, respond to it properly, and if they're just not going to get it, move on. Move on to something else. Okay, if they want to carry on about it after you've made the point, okay. How about this? Did you know that environmentally, animal agriculture is the leading cause of destroying our environment? So change the topic. If they're not going to get it, change the topic. Move on to something else. Does that help? Cool. Anything else? Anyone else? Yes.
How about the go-to if you're talking to someone and maybe like the chemistry's not really there, like it's kind of slow. You ask them questions and it just kind of dies. It's like a go-to, like pick up the pace and get the conversation going. It's like a bit awkward.
Yeah, I think I have a few really engaging questions that I like to ask. I feel like it really gets them going and thinking. So, yeah, very good point. What was your name? Maria. Maria's question was, what do you do if the conversation is starting to feel a bit dead? Like the chemistry's starting to fall away and it's a bit awkward and you're not really getting anything out of them and it's just dry, and what do you do to put life back into the conversation? I have a few really engaging questions that I like to ask that gets people thinking, but essentially this comes with practice, right? Because you learn how to not leave too much dead space between the things that you're saying and to keep them engaged with the questions that you're asking, etc. And some of the things I like to ask is, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this? Just like bring it back to their hearts. Just cut away from what we're thinking in our heads right now. How do you feel about this? Do you feel that this is a problem? If you feel that if they say yes, how do you feel we should eradicate this problem? Have them do the work for you almost. Like, how about they outreach themselves since they're not responding to you? So I asked them the question, how do you feel about this? Do you feel that this should be eradicated from the world? How do you feel we can go about doing that? Do you feel you have any power in doing something about this? I like to also ask, if you can live a life healthy and happy without harming animals, why wouldn't you? It's just a really good question to ask most people, no matter what the conversation is. I'd also like to ask, like, nearer to the end of the conversation, if you were to imagine going vegan today, what would be your biggest challenge that you feel that you would face? And then just tackle those objections. Does that help? Cool. Anybody else? Yes.
Yesterday I had a conversation with somebody from a religious perspective, the idea that animals are actually here for us to use.
Yes. What's your name? Sorry? Vegan? Doesn't that sound like vegan? Okay, almost vegan. Vega's question is, what do you say to people that say that animals are here for us? From a God perspective, they're appealing to God. I would say that animals are here for their own reasons, and they're here with us, not for us. God would not have given animals a brain, a central nervous system, the ability to feel a myriad of things that we feel ourselves, like happiness, joy, pain, suffering, and I'm only mentioning a few feelings. God wouldn't give them the ability to feel that if they were merely here to be turned into a sandwich. You know? I think God would be a lot happier with us if we put the knives and the guns down and we befriended our fellow earthlings as opposed to stabbing them in the throat for our palate pleasure. That's what I would say. Does that help? Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? Any other? Everybody was giving me objections that they struggle with or they would like insight on. So that's mainly what I like to focus on from now on when I'm doing these workshops. I like to focus on the actual arguments that people love to give us and how to respond to them. So can you think of any other arguments that you are challenged with?
It tastes good.
It tastes good? Sex feels good, but I don't like to rape people. Yes?
What if they tell you that fish don't feel pain, for instance?
Fish don't feel pain. I say, actually, fish feel more pain than we do because they don't have the ability, most fish don't have the ability to cut off the pain receptors during a accident. So when something happens that's causing pain and injury to them, they don't have the ability to cut off like we do. Like if you fall and hit your knee as a human, you won't feel it as much as you will the next day. The next day you'll be in pain. Yeah, so that's the brain that we have. We have the ability to cut off pain receptors. Fish don't have that ability. They feel all of it. Most fish, yeah, I'm talking about not all fish. They also are incredibly intelligent. They are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. There's a few experiments online that you can watch and you can maybe tell bystanders about. They've done experiments on fish that show exactly how intelligent they are. It blows my mind. So, does that help? I would also say that even if they don't feel pain, they obviously would like to live because they fight when we catch them on hooks. They fight to live, and therefore we should respect their will to live when we don't need to be eating them. I'd also say that as well. Yes?
Yeah, and then here, people asking me if it would be a solution in suffering if we would eat, and farming in the world, if you would eat insects.
Yeah, I've heard this. So I would say this to that person. So the question was, in case nobody heard, the question was, what if someone says that eating bugs is a solution to ending animal agriculture? Like to get our protein from bugs instead of from meat, dairy and eggs. I would say if that person is willing, no, I don't know if I'd say that actually. I just hear this so much, and I know that the people that are saying this are not actually willing to drop eating animal products and only eat bugs and plants. They're just saying this in order to play intellectual gymnastics with you and to see, who win. So, yeah, maybe I wouldn't ask. The question I was going to pose was, are they willing to drop eating animal products and only eat bugs and plants? I wouldn't say that because I'm promoting eating bugs by saying that. So I wouldn't say that. I would say, currently in the world we live in, do you really think it's a practical solution to suggest that everybody eats cockroaches with their lettuce and broccoli? Do you think everybody's going to be sold on that? Do you think it's just more practical for us to leave animal products alone and make tasty foods out of plants. Even if you made a burger that was delicious, but then told me it was made out of cockroaches, I'd be disgusted. I would. So, and that's me. Like, I don't know, most people I'm sure would be on the same page. It's not a practical solution. That would be the angle that I'd come at it from. Does that help? Cool. Anybody else? Yes.
But I'd like to just add something to that question that I think might also help to answer that question, is that bugs play an incredibly important role, not only in fertilizing our crops, but also in the entire ecosystem.
Yes.
So if people like massively start eating bugs, everything will collapse.
Yes.
And that might be an environmental reason to just like add in there if you're stuck for it.
That's a good point. So that point that was made, what was her name? By Maria, is that the other thing you could also mention in that circumstance is the environmental detriment to our environment. Bugs play a very important role to our ecosystem, so they need to be left alone. So that would be the other thing that you would mention in that circumstance. Anybody else? Yes. Hi.
Another one that I read a lot is that veganism is too extreme and that they choose to biological meat or eggs, like chicken or pig. And what they tell me that is like, okay, but you still not yeah, but that is animal making it a great condition to change.
Are they eating?
I get both like vegetarian is only one.
So they're eating veganism other than the fact that so they don't agree with commercial anything. They don't agree with commercial they don't eat it. Sure.
That's what they tell me.
Yeah, because most people that say they don't agree with factory farming purchase and consume factory farm products all the time.
What's the question, please?
Sorry. Thank you. What's her name again? Marina. Marina's question was, what do you say to someone that says that veganism is too extreme? I have animals on my property, they lay eggs, I get milk from them, etc. They're not being harmed. What's the big problem? Being vegan is too extreme. If I have to stop doing that. So my response would be that there is no acceptable form of exploitation. Because that's what it is, it's exploitation. When you get a hen and you have a hen on your property, you had to get the hen from a breeder. The breeder kills the male chicks that are born. They murder all of them. The breeder also perpetuates this breed. They continue to bring this breed into existence, and the breed is a rubbish breed because they lay so many eggs every year, and it's completely unnatural. They lay over 300 eggs every year. When we found these chickens in Tibet, before we started messing with the species, they lay 12 to 17 a year. So that was normal, that was natural. Now they lay over 300 because we like omelets. But if you buy a chicken from a breeder, you're supporting this process of breeding these animals into existence. So you are supporting the murder of male chicks, you are supporting the continuance of this breed, and let's be honest, the person only has that chicken on their property for one reason, and that's because of what comes out of their ass. Not for any other reason. It's not because they want them there as a friend, because that's what people get dogs for. They don't get chickens for that reason. They get chickens because they want to eat omelets. That is exploitation, that is commodification, that is objectification, and that is the crime. Not necessarily cruelty, not necessarily physical harm that we're causing that we can see with our own eyes. Biologically, it's torturous for that chicken to even exist because they have to lay so many eggs all the time. And they don't like it when you take their eggs from them. They get very protective. It's their property. They sometimes eat their own eggs to get minerals from the eggs that they are deficient in because they're constantly having to produce eggs. So they don't like it when you take the eggs from them. This is exploitation. Commodification is the crime. It's not necessarily how we treat them. So that would be more of a welfarist way of... The person who says that is coming from a welfarist point of view, so it would be about bringing it back to how wrong it is to exploit animals in general. There's no humane way to exploit someone who wants to be free. And if animals were truly happy with this situation, why do we build fences around our backyard to keep them in there? If we had no fence and they still remained there every day, then I'd understand where people were coming from. But they would run off. They would not want to stay there. So, does that help? Does that answer your question? All right, anybody else? Yes?
What if someone is saying that he has a health issue, and he has to eat animal products?
Okay, so the question is, what if somebody has health issues and says they need to eat animal products? What's that?
Many people mention their blood type.
Yes, many people will mention their blood type. The blood type diet has been debunked multiple times. Dr. Greger has a great video online debunking the blood type diet. The blood type diet was a book that was released, but it was released on false information and there was no science to back it up. So very quick research on that, you'll find out that blood types don't have anything to do with diet. Every species has a species-specific diet. Every dog, pretty much, eats the same diet, right? Every human. And look how weird and different there's so many different breeds of dogs. We've got different sizes, different shapes, different colors. There's so many dogs, yet they all eat a very similar diet. Same with humans. So there's no blood type diet, that doesn't exist. If somebody says that, it's about educating them. Did you know that the blood type diet has been debunked? Did you know that there's a video by Dr. Greger on YouTube that takes you through the flaws in that book? And if somebody says that they need to eat animal products to be healthy, I would then go back into discovery questions. I would ask, what nutrient do you get from animal products that you feel you can't get from plants? So then they might say iron or calcium, or I need omega-3s, or whatever it might be. Then you might want to go into the correct information. So nutritionally, if you have any questions, let me know, because I am a nutritionist, or I was trained as a plant-based nutritionist. If you have any information you need on nutrition, let me know. Specific questions. But generally I would go into what they think they need to get from animal products, and then just let them know that you can get that quite easily from plants, and it's actually more bioavailable from plants than it is from animal products. A lot of people like to say that it's more bioavailable from the animal products, which makes no sense because it's so hard to break down meat and so hard to break down eggs, and dairy products are horrible for us. So it's much easier to get these nutrients into our bodies from plants. Does that help? Who asked that question? I've forgotten. All right, yeah. Does that help? Yeah? Cool. Yes?
What about animal testing? And if they think it's a necessity and they ask you, would you take the place of the animal?
Take the what?
Take the place of the animal, the test subject.
So the question is, what if people say that animal testing is necessary? I'm assuming necessary for the evolution of our medical sciences? Okay. What's that? Yeah, for cancer research or whatever, yeah. Again, this is a matter of educating them on the realities. So I would go into educating them on the reality of animal testing. There is no real science to show that testing on animals is the best method that we have for finding a cure to cancer, for example. There is no actual evidence of that. we can find these things out without exploiting animals, sticking needles into them. And no, we wouldn't take their position, because that's our whole point, isn't it? We're out on the streets talking about this because we wouldn't want to be in their position, and neither would anybody out here on the streets. And that's why we're having this conversation. So if they said, would you want to be in that position? That would be a great question to ask me, because no, hell no, that's why we're out here. Because you wouldn't want to be in that position either, right? Animal testing is a lie. Animal testing is not good science. It's bad science. It doesn't actually produce the results that it promises to. So this is about educating them on this, and yes.
Make something into the same thousand.
Yeah. That's a hypothetical question. So if the question is, what if somebody said, would you test on 1,000 animals in order to save 1,000 humans? No, it doesn't. I disagree with you. He said, depends on who the humans are. Okay, so my official response to this would be that since this is a hypothetical question and doesn't actually relate to our reality right now, because we're not in that position right now where we have to choose between 1,000 humans or 1,000 animals. It's a hypothetical. Let me just answer that, and then I'll answer yours. Okay. Yeah, we have to wrap this up. Okay, cool. My very short answer would be no, I wouldn't do that, because you're losing 1,000 lives to save 1,000 lives. So if we're going to lose 1,000 lives anyway, why would we, like, it doesn't make sense to me to kill 1,000 animals in order to save 1,000 animals, because we're animals ourselves, right? Okay, so what if someone says, would you test on one animal to save 1,000 humans? There is no science. Again, this is not a real question. This is a hypothetical question. There is no real science to show that testing on one animal will save 1,000 humans. So why are we even having this discussion? It's almost like we're distracting from what we're faced with in reality right now. And so I would just try to bring the question back to the reality that we have, which is that person choosing between a veggie burger and a chicken burger, because that's the reality that we have right now in this world. Not the choice between one animal, 1,000 humans. That choice doesn't exist. But as a hypothetical, we still wouldn't condone it, because we're still killing in the process, and we don't have any science that shows that it will actually produce those results. Those industries that say that are usually lying. The ones that say that they tested on animals in order to bring about a cure for humans. It's bad science. I'm going to wrap this up now. I will answer your question out of respect, because I said I would. What was your question? Question is, how many people have friends who have died from cancer?
So there's cancer research going on here where they do use mice for testing, and it is necessary.
Yes?
They kill them very quickly. There's a specified way of killing them. And it's necessary.
Are you here a part of this group with us here today? Oh, so you're a part of the public?
I'm just in white.
No, I was wondering that from the get-go, but I just realized that. Yeah.
Review the research that's going on where things like mice are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Would you sacrifice that to possibly be able to save a bunch of people who are suffering from all these things?
Well, again, if you were to show me that science that shows that the killing one mice saved thousands of lives. Yeah.
To see what goes on.
Yeah.
And it's very merciful how they kill them. They kill them very quickly.
Yeah, but the point is that the animals have a will to live. They want to live and they value their lives. Of course they do. Well, if you were to...
Actually, right.
Yeah. So taking their lives from them, how do we justify that? Is it to save lives in this case?
You've never seen anybody die of cancer.
I had cancer when I was 18, so I understand the plight of cancer patients and what they suffer. But my point is that taking the life from another being, another animal, because we're animals ourselves, in order to save us, how can that truly be justified if the science is there that shows that? I know that most of you know about the China study.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
So the China study was carried out on rats. There were studies that were used on rats throughout that. However, there is a whole body of science that exists out there that was carried out without testing on animals. That is helping cancer and diabetes and osteoporosis and most of the things that we suffer with, helping in many of those areas.
So they kill too many animals and they kill them stupidly.
Yeah.
And mercilessly.
Yeah.
But this particular research, and I know people who do it, they're very exact, it is necessary, and if you've ever seen a serious cancer victim suffering, you kind of go, oh.
Okay.
But go up to AMC and they'll probably talk to you there and you can see what they do. They're doing incredible cancer research.
Okay.
And they eat the mice. The mice live great lives. Until they kill them. Anyway, go up there, AMC Hospital.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to wrap this up on that note and get into the cube because we're going over time here. Yes, round of applause. So, just to conclude